I think EconPol Europe is a unique platform. It's a unique opportunity. As Clemens was saying, I mean, the link between the national debates and the European debates, I think this is very important. And this idea of a network contributing this is, of course, the modern approach to do things. You pool the national resources, you pool the breadth of thinking in a network. And this was, you know that the German Ministry of Finance is kind of initiated this. I think I should go through a couple of principles that guided us that are very much in line also with the European principles that we all cherish. I mean, the first one is independence. I think that the first paper that you've written shows that the spirit of the network is independence. I mean, the German Ministry of Finance initiated it. It contributes financing, but it's truly our sense of things not to interfere with what is being done. So we were not involved in the choice of the group of 9 or in the paper or anything. And that's what it's meant to be. If you knew whom else we sponsor, you'd also understand why we really truly mean the independence, because there are also the whole spectrum of views is covered. The second is the principle of subsidiarity. I think we need to have the national level, the national expertise come together with the European level and the European expertise. But it has to be coordinated. And we need to bring together the views and then work towards solutions and consensuses. Of course, I have to mention the principle of sound public finances, because as a finance ministry, that's what we are there for. And we put up the money, and we hope it's managed well and used efficiently, and that there is no need for a bailout, or that soft budget constraints will not kill the initiative. So I guess that's what everybody of you faces. It's not different. We have we are very happy to use to contribute to this initiative, and that another principle is that we will hopefully contribute to is cohesion in Europe, cohesion of the countries, and cohesion under the European umbrella. Now, I think it's also this network is also meant to be a counterweight to a tendency that we see today, not only in the US but also in Europe, and that's the interest-led think tanks and the interest-led research. That is a very grave threat that we all have at the moment, I think. As I said, I think in the US they are way beyond, much further along on this path, but I hope that we'll in Europe manage to stay clear from that. And then, of course, the objective is to get from you sound analysis and sound advice. So I think the first paper that we have here is actually an excellent starting point for that. As Etienne was saying, it covers the two kind of main approaches. It systematizes the main elements of the two approaches, the Maastricht and the US approach. And I mean, one could see them as kind of corner solutions, which are not really corner solutions, because as the paper says, the banking union is part of both. And the real world is always a lot grayer than the corner solutions that we can conceptually describe. But I think it's an excellent way of mapping out the choices we have. And there's one aspect that the paper doesn't make as explicit, but that is the big challenge for all of us, and that is in a way the difference in views about the role of markets and the state. the different views about kind of the role of the center versus the regions, federalist versus centralist approach, policy making. And that feeds, of course, into our thinking and into our analysis. And from what I see from the choice of players in this network, I see that this is really a very good match to also help deal with that and maybe use that diversity in a productive manner rather than just have it as a divisive element in front of us. And making maybe a few more comments on the paper. I think that Maastricht model and US model, I mean, there's one absolute prerequisite, no matter what direction we are going. And that should, to my mind, be one of the foci, one of the centers of our attention. As we all know from our national experience or federal experience at the national level, we need the implementation of rules. We need the rule of law, and we need institutions that are strong enough to actually do this. This is true for Germany as much as for France or for Italy or for any other country. This is something that no matter which path we will take, we will need to deal with. And the paper makes only a fleeting reference to it in the context of the Stability and Growth Pact, but we know that we have the same challenge in banking supervision. We have a similar challenge, maybe not to the same extent, but to some extent also in the area of common market. It's due to the history of our common European project that perhaps the kind of administration had to be more political and more suave and more subtle and more flexible than at the national level. But when you move towards either of these models, when so much is at stake as in a monetary union with the ambition to move much further than that monetary union, then this rule of law at the European level and how we can strengthen it is going to be one of the main challenges. And it's not only a legal challenge, it's also an economic challenge, as we know, and it will require a lot of thinking about institution designs and incentives. So that point, I think, is a whole research agenda by itself, but it is something that is not pleasing to everybody. And I hope the colleagues from the Commission who are here will not misunderstand me. This is not to put blame on anybody, but I think it's really important for the effectiveness of our policy decisions and of the path we go in the future, that what we decide is then actually implemented, so that we don't get the feedback into these frustration loops of non-implementation leading to cynicism and mistrust, which then kind of feeds back into the expectation of non-implementation and political lobbying and all these things. So I think there is kind of, in a way, a good equilibrium and a bad equilibrium in terms of the implementation, where when you expect rules to be followed, you are more likely to follow them, you're likely to have less lobbying against it, and so on. So this is, I think, an important area of research. Now, how to do that? I mean, that in the fiscal area is going to be a key challenge, no matter what path we are going to take, whether we are going to stick more to the rules-based approach or whether we are really going to go towards something like what Etienne was saying, a euro area budget, or even a kind of a union fiscal government with all the full set of institutional elements that we know from the national level. Now, what's the priority? Then comes the question of, well, you may see the German position shining through here. So far, I think I've been relatively presidential. But I'm used to that role from the G20, because in G20 we have the presidency, and I now have to behave like somebody who is not having a position. So I think that is important to kind of differentiate. But if you look at at kind of positions that are perhaps more akin to what we have in Germany, then I would say the prioritization should be rather on making the system work than on moving to mechanisms of risk sharing with automated common payment or common funds and pools of money, which then set in motion again the risk of moral hazard, and rather than doing the necessary things to make the union work, you do the things that serve you in the short run, and that may cost the union a lot of money. And that is, of course, linked to the common backstop and to EDIS, where I think we have to be very careful. On the sovereign default procedure, I see Etienne's point, and this is going to be a very tricky one. At the same time, we already have at the IMF, at the global level, this contractual approach that links CACs with the need for prolongations and restructuring, as we have painfully now experienced in discussions with the IMF over Greece, where effectively the IMF claims to be implementing the new regimes, and we are saying, yes, we want to implement the new regime, but we want to implement it the European way. So I think there was a good compromise found last week, but it shows the difficulty, even so to speak, when you adjust that system, that relatively broad IMF approach, to a case like Greece. And if we want to move towards a European system, we will see how far we get. My consolation is we have the IMF approach, and as long as we need in kind of program cases, bankruptcy or near bankruptcy cases, the IMF will also require us to deal with these issues, otherwise they won't put up the money. And frankly, there is no money around to bail out anybody completely in the future. And frankly, it's also not fair and just towards whoever pays, if not the investors. And those who don't like German surplus may find consolation here in the sense that as net creditors, we are likely to bear a disproportionate burden of any sovereign debt restructuring that is happening in the future, as we are likely to hold a larger share of the assets that are then restructured. So I think there is fairness in a way in this approach when you look at it from this angle. Now, on the US model, if you have an EU budget for stabilization or permanent spending, as I said, we need a functioning governance. We need to have a discussion on what actually these things should do, and they should not simply be a substitute for rules not working in another place. So, I mean, to be more precise, the Stability and Growth Pact not working means some countries don't have the room for stabilization, so you put in a European stabilization facility instead. So you have to do the trade-off, and you have to see, what is in a way, how do we balance this, that we don't, and then we create possibly a European mechanism to deal with asymmetric shocks that also doesn't work and creates moral hazard. So we'll have to see that what we do actually contributes to a stable and prosperous Europe, and both models can achieve this. There is a lot of path dependence in it. And this is what worries me in a way, because the path dependence means that this shift in the governance is going to be very difficult. And we also have a centralization bias that is inherent in the treaties, ever deeper union. It's inherent in the way the European Court of Justice applies the European law in its rulings. And we have this path dependence to deal with as well. How is this desirable? How are we going to do it? Do we keep this unchanged, or do we not keep it unchanged? Because there might be a point where this introduces a lot of noise into the system and might not be sustainable at the political level. Which brings me to the last point. I think what Etienne was saying is that this effort to take our people with us is going to be very important. Whatever we do, I mean, we have to see that it has the democratic legitimacy, that it has the support by our people. Otherwise, we as economists, as a network, may have all kinds of dreams and may try to realize those dreams, but if our populations don't go along, we may see more of the things like that we saw in the Brexit vote, and that really we don't want to have. So thank you very much.